All right, thank you guys. And following Sunday's sports wagering action, we're 5-0 in our last 5 premium sports picks on BrockPage.com. $1,000 bettors made over $4,500 just on Sunday alone with my premium sports picks. We also improved to 5-0 with a push in our last 6 college basketball tier package picks on that very same webpage following Sunday as well. And the link for that package is in the description section below. And as always, guys, all the plays that I give out on BrockPage.com, they're my personal bets, games that I personally have action on. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into some Tuesday night action. I'm talking about UNC versus Clemson, 6 o'clock Eastern start time on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. The UNC Tar Heels are -1 with the total at 151.5. But despite being the slight favorite in this one, the Tar Heels have had significant problems defensively on the road. They're allowing 83 points a game when they travel, and they're letting their opponents connect on 41% of their three-pointers against them in that same category. They're taking on a Clemson team who's winning 80% of their contests at the Littlejohn Coliseum. And they covered the point spread in 7 out of their last 10 ball games in front of their home fans. Alamir Dawes, he's drilling 41% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring nearly a dozen points a game. Meanwhile, David Collins is making over 45% of his three-point shots. He's also scoring 11 points a game himself. And speaking of three-pointers, Clemson's in the top 5 in the nation in offensive three-point percentage at home. When it comes to the total in this one, Clemson's gone 70% to the over in front of their home fans. Meanwhile, 8 out of UNC's last 10 away from Chapel Hill got over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Clemson +1 in the over 151.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Marquette versus UConn, 6:30 p.m. East. UConn's -5.5, totals 144. And despite their current skid, the Huskies are still 9-2 straight up at home this year, and they actually do a really nice job scoring with the basketball. The Huskies are averaging 82 points a game on their home court, and they're actually in the top 15 in the country in home offensive boards. RJ Cole, he's scoring 16 points a game, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Tyrese Martin, he's making 44% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 13 points a game as well. Now, when it comes to defensive play, UConn's limiting their opponents to just 37% shooting from the field at the XL Center. They're taking on a Marquette team who's amongst the worst in the Big East in grabbing defensive boards. Now, the Golden Eagles also lost 6 out of their last 10 meetings with UConn, and they covered the number in only 40% of those contests. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, Marquette saw overs recently with Nova, DePaul, and Georgetown. They're also 6-4 to the over in their last 10 contests against UConn. Meanwhile, the Huskies on the other side of things, they are currently 64% to the over on their home court. I'm going to lean toward the UConn Huskies, -5.5, and the over 144. Next ball game should be a good one. I'm talking about Auburn versus Arkansas, 7 p.m. Eastern start time. The Auburn Tigers are -4 with the total at 150.5. And despite being absolutely dominant here on the road this season, the Tigers did fail to cover the point spread recently against the likes of Georgia and Missouri. Now, they've also had a tough time getting the W against Arkansas in recent meetings. They lost 6 out of their last 10 ball games against the Razorbacks. They allowed nearly 83 points a game during that span. And speaking of giving up points, well, Auburn's allowing 72 points a game when they travel. So although these guys have been virtually unbeatable this year, there are a few problem areas. And I think that lackadaisical defensive play on the road might come back to bite them at least a couple times this year. Now, they're taking on an Arkansas team who's on an 8-game winning streak themselves, and they covered the point spread 7 times during that span I just mentioned. The Razorbacks are also 13-1 straight up at home this year, and they're led by J.D. Notae, who's scoring over 18.5 points per contest, along with 4 boards and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Audie's Tony is averaging double-digit points a game himself, along with 5 rebounds. And when it comes to defensive play in this one, Arkansas is limiting their competition to just 66 points a game at home and just 40% shooting from the field there. Now, total-wise, 3 out of Arkansas's last 5 got over the line, 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with the Tigers. So if you're into historical trends, you certainly want to think about that one there. Meanwhile, Auburn went 70% to the over in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Arkansas +4, keeping this one close, and the over 150.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Iowa State versus West Virginia, 7 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Now, West Virginia is -1 with a total at 127. But despite how good these guys been at home, the Mountaineers are currently on a 7-game losing streak, and they're actually scoring only 69 points a game in Morgantown. Meanwhile, the biggest concern here, their leading scorer, Taz Sherman, he's questionable to play on Tuesday. He's still battling that concussion. So questionable to play. Keep an eye on his status. Now, West Virginia is taking on an Iowa State team who's in the top 10 in the country in guarding the 3-ball, and they're allowing 61 points a game. This is a team that plays very tough defensively. Now, scoring-wise, Isaiah Brockington, he's averaging over 16.5 points a game, along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, Tyrese Hunter, he's scoring 10.5 points per contest himself, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. Now, total-wise, Iowa State saw their last 3 straight fall under the posted number, and they're currently 61% to the under for the entire season. Meanwhile, West Virginia saw 8 out of their last 13 at home fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Iowa State +1 and the under 127. Next contest, it is going to be Kentucky versus South Carolina, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Kentucky is -13, totals 140.5. But despite being favored by a whole bunch of points here, Kentucky failed to cover in 4 out of their last 6 ball games, with failures to cover coming against the likes of Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M. Now, the Wildcats also have a losing record against the spread on the road, and they're scoring just 69 points per contest when they travel. They're taking on a South Carolina team who's 9-3 straight up in front of their home crowd, and they're led by Eric Stevenson, who scores 11 points a game. He's also drilling 98% of his free throws. That's right, Stevenson is a near-perfect 41 of 42 from the stripe this year. That is absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, James Reese V, he's scoring over 10.5 points per contest himself, along with a couple of boards. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Gamecocks are limiting their opponents to just 40% shooting from the field. When it comes to the total in this one, South Carolina saw unders recently with Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Florida. Meanwhile, Kentucky's 6-1 of the under as the official road team. I'm going to lean towards South Carolina +13 and the under 140.5. Next ball game, it is going to be LSU versus Texas A&M. That's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. LSU's -4 on the road with the total at 131.5. Now, LSU's on a 3-game losing streak, and they also posted a record of just 1-6 straight up in their last 7. And out of those 7 games I just mentioned, the Tigers covered the point spread only once during that span. Now, LSU has significant problems offensively on the road. They're scoring just 64 points a game when they travel, and they're also shooting only 25% from 3-land in that same category. They're taking on an Aggie team who allows only 62 points a game in front of their home fans. And in addition to that, they're limiting their competition to just 40% shooting from the field there. This is a team who plays very tough defensively on their home court. Now, when it comes to offensive production in this one, Quentin Jackson, he's scoring 13 points a game along with 3 rebounds. Meanwhile, Hank Coleman III is averaging double-digit points a game himself, along with 5 rebounds. Now, the Aggies, they're currently 10-3 straight up in the Reed Arena. When it comes to the total in this one, Texas A&M saw unders recently with Kentucky and Ole Miss. Meanwhile, LSU saw 7 out of their last 9 away from home fall under the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Texas A&M +4 and the under 131.5. All right, next matchup I have for you. It is going to be Oklahoma State versus TCU. That's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The TCU Horned Frogs are minus 2.5. Total's 128. And I'll tell you what, even though this is a really good number for TCU backers, you just have to keep in mind that their leading scorer is questionable for Tuesday's action. Mike Miles is actually currently nursing a wrist injury at the moment. So I know a lot of folks are going to go through their books. They're going to see that number and get really excited for it. 2.5 point line at home for TCU, but they're leading their top guy. He might not play, so keep an eye on his status. Now, I'll tell you this much. The Horned Frogs have already had a tough time covering the number at home this year. They're just 4-7 against the spread in front of their home fans. And they're actually shooting just 29% from three-land there. Now, TCU's taking on an Oklahoma State team who plays some really tough defense on the road. And as a matter of fact, the Cowboys are in the top 35 in the nation in defensive field goal percentage away from home. When it comes to the scoring, Avery Anderson's averaging 11 points a game along with 2 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Bryce Thompson, he's scoring double-digit points a game himself, along with a couple of boards. Now, Oklahoma State held TCU to just 56 points in their prior meeting. When it comes to the total, well, the Cowboys went 60% to the under in their last 10 ball games. Meanwhile, TCU saw 4 out of their last 7 fall under the line themselves, throwing out that LSU game. I'm going to lean toward the underdog, Oklahoma State Cowboys, plus 2.5, and the under 128. Next matchup, Wisconsin versus Michigan State, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Michigan State's -4 at home, totals 137.5. Now, the Spartans are 9-1 straight up at home this year, and they're amongst the best three-point shooting teams in the nation. Matter of fact, Sparty's in the top 10 in offensive three-point percentage in the country, and they're led by Malik Hall, who's drilling 54% of his shots from beyond the arc this year. Meanwhile, Gabe Brown, he's scoring over 13 points a game along with 4 boards and 90% shooting from the stripe. The Spartans are averaging 78 points a game at the Breslin Center, and they're making almost 41% of their three-pointers as a team there. These guys are absolutely dangerous shooting the ball from downtown. Now, Sparty's taking on a Wisconsin team who failed to cover in their last 5 straight, and they score only 68 points a game on the road. Now, when it comes to shooting the basketball in this one, the Badgers are making just 30% of their three-pointers when they travel. These guys have been little threat shooting the 3-ball on the road. Now, total-wise, Wisconsin's 5-2 to the over in their last 7 as the road team. Meanwhile, Michigan State 60% to the over in front of their home crowd. I'm going to lean toward Michigan State -4 and the over 137.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Villanova versus St. John's. 8:30 p.m. Eastern tip-off at Madison Square Garden. Villanova's -8 away from home, totals 146.5. And despite being favored by 8 on the road here, the Wildcats may have to go to work without their 2 leading scorers, and Colin Gillespie and Justin Moore. Both of those guys are battling ankle injuries right now. They're both technically listed as questionable. I would highly recommend you keep an eye on their status before you lay this big number if you're looking to back Villanova here. And I'll tell you what, if that ain't bad enough, Nova already has a losing record against the point spread this year when they travel. The Wildcats are averaging just 69 points a game away from their home court, and they're making just 39% of their field goals away from the main line there in Radnor, PA. Now, they're taking on a St. John's team who won 10 games as the official home team already, and the Red Storm's also in the top 25 in the nation in scoring on average per contest. They're led by Julian Champagny, who's averaging over 18.5 points per contest, along with 6 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Posh Alexander scoring 14 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and 5 assists as well. Now, when it comes to head-to-head meetings between these two clubs, St. John's covered in 7 out of their last 10 meetings with Nova. When it comes to the total in this one, the Red Storm saw 5 out of their last 8 fall under the line. Meanwhile, Villanova saw unders recently with DePaul, Xavier, and this very St. John's team. I'm going to lean towards St. John's plus 8 and the under 146.5. All right, next ball game. It is going to be Butler versus Creighton, 9 p.m. East. Creighton is minus 8.5, totals 123. Now, Creighton's winning 70% of their home games this year, and they're allowing only 63 points per contest on their home court. They're also limiting their opponents to just 38% shooting from the field there. This is a team who plays very good defense in front of their home fans. Now, scoring-wise, Ryan Hawkins is averaging over 12.5 points per contest, along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, Alex O'Connell is scoring 12 points a game himself, along with 5 boards, and nearly 90% shooting from the stripe. They're taking on a Butler team who lost 7 out of their last 10 themselves, and they're scoring only 62 points a game on the road. Now, total-wise, no real surprise here. The Bulldogs saw unders recently with the likes of Georgetown. Meanwhile, Creighton's 8-2 to the under in their last 10 at home. I'm going to lean toward Creighton minus 8.5 and the under 123 in that tight window. All right, next ball game should be a good one. Little Big Ten action. I'm talking about Illinois versus Purdue, and that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Purdue's minus 5.5 with the total at 152. Now, Purdue's amongst the best scoring teams in the country right now. They're actually averaging over 87 points a game at home, and they're making 41% of their three-pointers as a team. The Boilermakers also find themselves in the top 3 in the nation in shooting from the field. Jaden Ivey, he's scoring over 17 points a game, along with 5 boards and 41% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, Travion Williams, sorry about that. Travion Williams, give me one sec. Somebody's knocking at the door. Nobody home. Maybe they went around the back. Anyway, what are we talking about here, guys? Jaden Ivey, he's scoring over 17 points a game along with 5 boards and 41% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, Travion Williams, he's making 44% of his shots from downtown, and he's also scoring 12 points a game. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Boilermakers are currently leading the country in defensive boards per contest. They're taking on an Illinois team who failed to cover in 4 out of their last 6, with failures coming against the likes of Northwestern, Michigan State, and Maryland. Now, they also gave up 96 total points to Purdue in their last meeting together. And speaking of head-to-head meetings, Illinois took the loss in 6 out of their last 10 contests against Purdue. When it comes to the total in this one, Illinois saw overs recently with Wisconsin, Maryland, and Nebraska. Meanwhile, Purdue saw their last 4 straight get over the line themselves, 80% to the over in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Purdue minus 5.5 and the over 152. Next ball game, it is going to be Indiana versus Northwestern, 9 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Northwestern is minus 1, totals 137.5. Now, the Wildcats won their last 2 straight, and they're actually playing some really good defense at home. Matter of fact, the Cats are allowing only 65 points a game at the Welsh Ryan Arena, and they're limiting their competition to just 39% shooting from the field there. Now, scoring-wise, Pete Nance is averaging 15 points a game, and he's also making 43% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, the best name in the business, Boo Buie, he's scoring over 15 points per contest himself, along with 2 boards and 5 assists. Now, Northwestern scoring 78 points a game in front of their home fans. They're taking on an Indiana team who gives up a bunch of points on the road. They're actually letting their opponents score nearly 75 points a game against them when they travel. And oddly enough, this is kind of a quirky trend. Really not sure if it's applicable, but definitely something to think about. The Hoosiers' opponents are making over 83% of their free throws against them when they travel. So, like, when Indiana fouls people on the road, they pay the price for it. 83% from the stripe against them when they travel. Anyway, total-wise, 5 out of Indiana's last 8 ball games got over the posted number. Meanwhile, Northwestern saw 7 out of their last 10 get over the total themselves. The Wildcats are officially 64% to the over on their home court this year. I'm going to lean toward Northwestern -1 in the over 137.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Missouri versus Vanderbilt, 9 p.m. East. Vandy's -7.5, totals 133. Now Vanderbilt won 2 out of their last 3 ball games, and they averaged 77 points a game during that short span. Scottie Pippen Jr. is scoring over 18.5 points per contest, along with 3 boards and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Jordan Wright, he's scoring 12 points a game himself, along with 6 rebounds and a couple assists as well. Now, Vandy's played some really tough defense at home this year. They're giving up only 64 points a game at Memorial Gym, and they're limiting their competition to just 30% shooting from 3-land there. Now, Vandy's taking on a Missouri team who wins just 25% of their road games, and they also allow a whole bunch of points when they travel. The Tigers allow over 76 points a game away from home. Meanwhile, offensively on the other end of the court, they've actually been terrible in that area as well. The Tigers are scoring only 62 points per contest away from their home court this year. When it comes to the total in this one, Mizzou saw overs with Texas A&M and Alabama recently. Meanwhile, Vanderbilt saw their last 3 straight get over the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Vanderbilt -7.5 and the over 133. All right, next ball game. We're getting into that later slate. I'm talking about Colorado State versus Nevada, 11 p.m. Eastern start time. Colorado State's -4 with a total at 152. Now, the Rams are one of the best shooting teams in the country. They're averaging over 77 points a game. They're also in the top 10 in offensive field goal percentage. David Roddy's drilling 48% of his 3 balls, and he's also averaging nearly 19 points a game. Meanwhile, John Tonji's making nearly 47% of his 3-pointers himself. He's also averaging 10.5 points a night. Now, the Rams are making nearly 50% of their shots from the field as a team. They're taking on a Nevada program who lost their last 5 straight, and they failed to cover the point spread in 10 out of their last 12. Now, the Wolfpack's given up just way too many points this year. They're allowing 75 points a game, and they're amongst the worst in the Mountain West in home defensive rebounding. These guys are really struggling in that category. And, of course, injury-wise, Washington and Sherfield, they're questionable to play for Nevada, so that could be really, really problematic for the Wolfpack here. Now, total-wise, the Wolfpack did see overs recently with Air Force and Boise State. They're also 7-3 to the over in their last 10 meetings with Colorado State, so if you're into historical trends, plenty of overs to go around. Meanwhile, the Rams on the other side of things, they saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Colorado State -4 and the over 152. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be UCLA versus Stanford. That's going to be an 11 o'clock Eastern start time. UCLA is -7.5, totals 134. But despite being favored by 7.5 on the road, the Bruins are on a 2-game losing streak. And they gave up 87 points to Arizona State in their most recent outing. The Bruins are also having significant problems offensively on the road. They're scoring just 68 points a game when they travel, and they're making only 39% of their field goals in that very same category. Now, they're taking on a Stanford club who's been very good at home this year. They're 10-2 straight up at the Maples Pavilion, and they're limiting their opponents to just 66 points a game there. Now, scoring-wise, Jaden Dallaire, he's averaging nearly 12 points a game along with 4.5 rebounds. Meanwhile, Harrison Ingram, he's scoring 11 points a game himself, along with 6 rebounds and a couple assists. And speaking of rebounds, the Cardinals currently in the top 15 in the nation in defensive boards per contest. Now, total-wise, Stanford went 7-2 to the under in their last 9 ball games. Meanwhile, UCLA went 60% to the under in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean towards Stanford plus 7.5 and the under 134. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap, powered to you by my website at brockpage.com. We are currently 5-0 with a push in our last 6 college basketball tier package picks. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Clemson plus 1 over 151.5. I also like UCONN minus 5.5 over 144. Give me Arkansas plus 4 over 150.5. I also like Iowa State plus 1 under 127. I'm also leaning toward South Carolina plus 13 under 140.5. Give me Texas A&M plus 4 under 131 and a hook. I also like Oklahoma State plus 2.5 under 128. Give me Michigan State minus 4 over 137.5. I also like St. John's plus 8 under 146 and a hook. Give me Creighton minus 8.5 under 123. I also like Purdue minus 5.5 over 152. Give me Northwestern minus 1 over 137.5. I also like Vanderbilt minus 7.5 over 133. Give me Colorado State minus 4 over 152. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean towards Stanford plus 7.5 and the under 134. With that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. If you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on brockpage.com, you're actually going to get access to those picks all the way through the end of February. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And guys, if you want to get access to every single pick that I give out on that website, you're going to want to think about signing up for my board member package, where board members get access not only to just the board member tier pick, but you also get access to every other package that I offer on that website. So you're looking anywhere between 5 to 6 premium sports picks that you're going to have access to every single day. They're all my personal bets. Certainly a good value there. And you're going to get access to those picks all the way through the end of February. But most importantly, guys, it's an all-inclusive pass. That's what I wanted to say. That was what I was looking for. It's an all-inclusive pass. You get access to everything. It's the best thing you can buy from me. But anyway, guys, most importantly, I got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Monday to you or Tuesday to you, depending on when you're watching this. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.